There is no question we are at war once again, and this first phase is to take out Gaddafi's air defenses.
When nonviolent demonstrations for democracy began in Libya in February 2011, a broad coalition of opposition forces loosely coordinated under the banner of the NTC, the interim government, formed by opposition leaders in the eastern city of Benghazi, quickly transformed the initially peaceful uprising into an internal armed conflict between forces that remained loyal to Gaddafi. Gaddafi was accused of supporting infamous rebel groups in Sierra Leone and Liberia, among other places, even though he was perceived as a Pan-African who aimed for African unification. He was seen as a threat and was hated by the West, especially France, Italy, Britain, and America. Why were the West, especially America, aimed at bringing Gaddafi down? What was it about this man that nobody is telling us? Come along with me and let's find out. Gaddafi had a vision and strong belief of uniting Africans. He believed a united Africa would speak with one voice at international forums such as the United Nations and manage to bargain and be seen as an equal partner. Gaddafi frequently described in speeches his vision of a united Africa with a single passport, an army to guard the continent and its own currency. He intended to decouple African currencies from the dollar standard by introducing a gold dinar as their backing. In addition, Gaddafi yearned to defend Africa's natural riches against Western looters. Even though Gaddafi was beloved by most African nations, a history of corruption and violations of human rights in his own nation made many Libyans hostile to him. Furthermore, mass protests against him were organized when the winds of the 2011 Arab Spring arrived in Libya, providing a window of opportunity for Western armies to intervene. Following the discovery of oil in 1959, Libya, which had previously been among the world's poorest nations, became relatively wealthy. The United States pursued policies focused on interests in operations at Wheelus Air Base and the significant U.S. oil interests, while maintaining an otherwise cordial relationship with Libya. Many children of American oil workers deployed to build oil field installations and pipelines were permitted to attend Wheelus High School in the early 1960s. They usually did so by bus from Tripoli's residential areas. Large aircraft would frequently require a brief stop while classes were in flight. U.S.-Libyan relations deteriorated after Muammar Gaddafi's 1969 coup, when Gaddafi nationalized the oil industry and ousted American oil companies. The U.S. called back its ambassador in 1972. In the 1970s, restrictions were placed on the export of both military and civilian aircraft, and American personnel stationed in Tripoli were removed following an embassy fire and mob attack in December 1979. Libya was listed as a state sponsor of terrorism by the U.S. government on December 29, 1979. Gaddafi openly backed the Palestinians and Arab governments that opposed Israel throughout the 1970s. He also backed the Arab states during the Yom Kippur War and the Arab oil embargo. The United Nations Security Council, UNSC, passed Resolution 1973 on March 17th, just as military forces loyal to Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi were closing in on Benghazi, the main opposition stronghold in the country's east. Resolution 1973 authorized the use of all necessary measures, apart from an occupation force, to protect civilians and imposed a no-fly zone over Libya. This resulted in NATO's Operation Unified Protector, which included military action to defend civilians from attack or threat of attack, the establishment of a no-fly zone over Libya, and an arms embargo. Pro-Gaddafi forces subsequently failed to recapture eastern Libya and Benghazi. Opposition forces received arms and training from France, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and possibly other governments. Later, Qatar admitted to having hundreds of its own soldiers stationed there. In response, the security forces of the government opened fire on the demonstrators when they began to stage protests in February 2011 against Muammar Gaddafi's rule over Libya. Gaddafi promised to hunt down the cockroaches and rats who had taken up arms against him, inch by inch, room by room, home by home, alleyway by alleyway, person by person, as an initially nonviolent protest movement matured into a full-fledged armed rebellion against his 42-year rule. A bloody battle broke out, with pro-Gaddafi forces randomly bombarding residential areas, detaining thousands of demonstrators and others thought to be sympathetic to the opposition, carrying out summary executions and imprisoning many of them in secret. However, following 8 months of fierce fighting and a military intervention by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, Muammar Gaddafi and his inner circle found themselves isolated and cornered in Sirte, his hometown. They had to move between deserted homes to avoid the ruthless and indiscriminate shelling of the area by anti-Gaddafi militias from Misrata, Benghazi, and other locations. On October 20th, 2011, Mutassim Gaddafi, the son of Muammar Gaddafi who had spearheaded the defense of Sirte, gave the order for Gaddafi's inner circle, his remaining supporters, and a portion of the remaining civilian population to evacuate Sirte's besieged District 2 in a convoy of about 50 heavily armed vehicles. The attempted escape was futile. Witnesses claimed that a NATO drone fired a missile at the heavily armed convoy of Gaddafi loyalists as it attempted to escape the besieged District 2 of Sirte, destroying one vehicle. The rest of the convoy continued west a few hundred meters until they encountered a militia based in Misrata. They were then hit by airburst bombs fired by a NATO warplane, which destroyed dozens of Gaddafi fighters. Muammar Gaddafi and other survivors from the convoy fled to a nearby walled villa compound, where they soon attempted to escape through the nearby fields and 2 drainage pipes underneath a major road, while some of the survivors of the NATO attack engaged in combat with the Misrata militiamen. That's where the militias in Misrata were caught. This report provides evidence that militias based in Misrata captured and disarmed members of the Gaddafi convoy, bringing them under complete control. The militias then reportedly beat the captured members brutally before killing dozens of them. The Libyan authorities did not look into the crimes or hold the perpetrators accountable until 7 months after. Muammar Gaddafi's son Mutassim, who was in charge of Sirte's military defense and had led the doomed convoy, was separately apprehended by Misrata militia members that same morning on October 20th as he attempted to escape the scene of the fighting. Shortly after his capture, Mutassim was captured on camera, looking alert and ambulatory despite having minor shrapnel wounds on his upper chest. Later on October 20th, he can be seen smoking cigarettes and drinking water in a room with Misrata militia fighters from the Lions of the Valley militia. He had fresh, significant wounds by the afternoon of the same day, indicating that he may have been killed while being held captive. Following the battle, anti-Gaddafi forces are thought to have captured 150 people alive. About 70 of these survivors were taken to Misrata and detained there. But the following day, at the nearby Mahari Hotel, at least 53, if not 66, bodies were discovered. 29 of the detained individuals are seen in amateur video taken by a fighter in Misrata being beaten, slapped, insulted, and spat upon by their captors at the scene of their capture. Human Rights Watch identified 6 of the 29 men in the video as being among the bodies later photographed on the Mahari Hotel grounds. Hospital staff in Sirte have also confirmed a match between the 7 men seen on the video and those discovered at the hotel. Friends and family identified 5 more bodies found at the hotel. Despite the fact that the evidence points to the involvement of Misrata-based militia members in the crime or their direct knowledge of it, Libya's transitional authorities have not conducted a thorough investigation into this serious offense. There is an urgent need to bring all of Libya's militias under the complete control of the new authorities, as evidenced by the transitional authorities' failure to investigate and maintain control over the heavily armed militias. Human Rights Watch demands that the international community insist on responsibility for these crimes and provide technical support for the investigation, and that the Libyan authorities act immediately to look into and prosecute the killings in Sirte. When it came to the United States, Mr. Putin was not so forgiving. He played down criticism of U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's vote last week, framing it as part of U.S. efforts to undermine Russia. On Thursday, he escalated the situation by claiming that U.S. special troops were responsible for the assassination of ousted Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Who was responsible for this? Mentioned Putin. Drones, even U.S. drones. His column was attacked by them. He was then killed without a courtroom or an investigation by the so-called resistance and fighters who had been brought in by the special forces, who shouldn't have been there. The accusation, according to a U.S. military spokesman, is ludicrous. In unrelated news, Mr. Putin claimed that U.S. Senator John McCain was becoming insane, most likely as a result of the abuse he endured while a prisoner in the Vietnam War. In October, McCain stated something that made dictators like Putin nervous. Putin was replying to this statement. Mr. Putin went on, hinting that the much-heralded reset of relations between the United States and Russia was in danger of collapsing and that the United States actually needed vassals. People are sick of living under one nation's rules. The well-planned display, which was intended to improve Putin's reputation and demonstrate that he was still in charge of Russia, highlighted his charisma and his innate capacity for commanding attention. The released classified files concerning the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi indicate that the 2011 NATO involvement in Libya was a cover-up for more sinister goals than humanitarian aid. Gaddafi was overthrown because of his scheme to establish a Pan-African currency, which put Western financial hegemony in jeopardy. More than humanitarian considerations, the motivations of Western nations, especially France, were economic ones, centered upon oil, power, and the maintenance of the petrodollar system. It is revealed that a number of factors, including securing a larger portion of Libya's oil production for French companies, enhancing French political influence in North Africa, enhancing the prestige of French President Nicolas Sarkozy at home, and giving the French military a chance to demonstrate its might on a global scale, drove his intervention in Libya. The emails also imply that France's long-standing economic hegemony over its former African colonies may be jeopardized by Gaddafi's proposal to create a Pan-African currency. The film illustrates how private banks and other financial entities create a complicated web of debt, exploitation, and monetary manipulation that supports the global financial system. The foundation of this system is the petrodollar system, which has controlled the world's oil trade since the 1970s and allowed the U.S. to accrue debt while exporting inflation to other countries. A country that dares to oppose this financial hegemony will suffer dire consequences. In 2000, Iraq's Saddam Hussein tried to sell oil in euros rather than dollars, which sparked an invasion of the country by the U.S. in 2003. Similar to this, the financial elite targeted Gaddafi because of his proposal to openly trade Libyan oil in a new Pan-African currency, which he saw as an existential danger to the petrodollar system and the U.S. dollar's hegemony over it. The president of Russia contends that the West's desire for Africa's natural wealth and cheap labor was the real motivation for the imperial conquest and enslavement of Libya, notwithstanding the rhetoric of democracy and human rights. The speaker berates Hillary Clinton and other Western officials for their ruthless disdain for Libyan lives and their ensuing pursuit of geopolitical and economic self-interest. This is demonstrated by the emails that were published regarding Hillary Clinton, which include conversations about money, oil, and the consolidation of Western financial and resource dominance over Africa. The speaker issues a dire warning. Any country that dared to question the status quo could be subject to military invasion, masquerading as humanitarianism. U.S. allies are taking notice of the catastrophic disclosure. The U.S. Justice Department has launched a criminal inquiry, and President Joe Biden is reportedly keeping a close eye on the matter. Recently, images of classified documents have been making the rounds on Discord, Telegram, Twitter, and other platforms. However, some of them may have been there for weeks prior to being picked up by the media. U.S. officials are working quickly to have them removed, as many of them are no longer accessible on the websites where they first surfaced. According to U.S. diplomat Vedant Patel, U.S. officials are contacting worried nations to reassure them of our commitment to protecting intelligence and our ability to secure our partnerships. According to Meager, a spokeswoman for the Ministry of Defense, a team was investigating if the documents were authentic. According to photos, the documents appear to be in the same format as the daily intelligence updates that our senior operations in Ukraine and Russia get, the speaker stated. Still, he said, some seem to have been edited. At least one document seems to have been changed from its original version, which stated that Russia had incurred less losses than Ukraine. For U.S. intelligence sources, the repercussions of these leaks may be dire or even fatal. Meager issued a warning saying, the release of classified and sensitive information can not only have enormous consequences for our national security, but can also lead to death. Many supporters praised Gaddafi's administration for the creation of a more equal society through domestic reform. They stressed the regime's achievements in combating homelessness, ensuring access to food and safe drinking water, and to dramatic improvements in education. Supporters have also applauded achievements in medical care, praising the universal free healthcare provided under the Gaddafist administration, with diseases like cholera and typhoid being contained and life expectancy raised. Nevertheless, human rights activists criticized Gaddafi's regime for its treatment of non-Arab Libyans, citing persecution of native Berbers, Italian colonists, Jews, refugees, and foreign laborers in Gaddafist Libya. Human rights organizations also took issue with how migrants, including asylum seekers, were treated as they traveled through Gaddafi's Libya to reach Europe. If you find this video interesting and want to see more videos on Black people's history, kindly click the like, share, and subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell so that you will be notified when we upload a new video. Thanks for watching.